amateur hunter steps into tall grass and quickly ends up paying the price. You should never walk in the woods alone. Even the most experienced hunters and woodsmen aren't immune to the dangers of the great outdoors, and one wrong move can mean the difference between life and death. For Dana Sanders Jr., all it took was one misplaced step into a patch of tall grass, and his life was never the same again. It began on a cool September day as Dana and his father, Dana Sanders Sr., readied themselves for an afternoon in the woods. Bow season was upon them in Mississippi, and Dana and his dad already had the perfect hunting spot picked out. Nestled on the Sanders family farm in Claiborne County was a brand new food plot, the perfect lure for any unsuspecting deer in search of a bite. Hanging a stand in the nearby trees would almost certainly guarantee them a successful trip. The archers made a beeline for the tree line, and within just a few minutes their stand was mounted and ready to go. There was a problem. Several trees and branches were now blocking a clear shot of the field. And so, with a pole saw in hand, Dana began trimming the shooting lane as his father looked on from above. All the while, Dana made sure not to trip over the piles of discarded brush that sat scattered along the edge of the plot. After an hour's work, Dana had just one branch to go. He eagerly took a step forward, not bothering to look at the tall grass growing alongside a particularly large brush pile. Then he felt it. The strike was quick, violent, delivering a sensation unlike anything other to his left leg. Then the pain hit. Stumbling from the brush, Dana quickly rolled up his pant leg. He could only stare at the sight. Just above the boot were two fang marks, deep, set about an inch apart. As blood began to pour from the wounds, Dana knew he needed to act quickly and headed right back toward the brush pile. Pain surging through his leg, Dana eased back into the brush, desperate to identify the snake that had bit him in order to determine what kind of antivenom he'd need. Sure enough, his attacker lay curled just a few yards away, and it was huge. It was a 6-foot-long timber rattlesnake, one of the largest and deadliest snakes in North America. Its venom was now coursing through Dana's veins. A few errant branches in his shooting lane had now become the least of his worries. Dana Sr. quickly helped his son to their truck and gunned it for the nearest hospital, some 30 minutes away. The pain in Dana's leg had grown so severe that even his right one began to tremble. Though even in his agony, a startling realization occurred to him. The hospital wouldn't have any antivenom. As a former volunteer fireman, Dana knew that the antivenom was kept at a location across town, meaning that someone would have to bring it to the hospital. And so, through the pain, Dana managed to call 911 to let the ER know he was coming. An ambulance met Dana halfway, and by the time he reached the hospital, it felt like a steamroller had run over him. Even the doctors pumped him full of morphine. The pain only continued to increase. The swelling was just as bad, and after just a few hours, it spread all the way up to his hip. Doctors even had to remove two 2-inch sections of rotten tissue from his leg to prevent the venom from doing serious damage. Fortunately, after 12 vials of antivenom, the swelling began to subside, and the painkillers soon began to work their magic. Dana was released just 3 days later, though his fateful misstep would cost him more than just some lost time in the hospital. In a literal sense, Dana's treatment didn't come cheap. Between the dozen vials of antivenom and high doses of heavy pain meds, Dana walked away with a whopping $440,000 in medical bills, though that was nothing compared to the physical costs. For 4 months afterward, Dana experienced a constant nagging pain in his lower leg, almost as sharp as the initial bite itself. Even now, some 6 years later, he still feels the effects. Where I got bit, my doctor told me, it will always be a big, nasty sore place. It's just a big spot that always tingles, Dana told Clarion Ledger. I've got to wear these diabetic socks. I can't wear a typical sock on that leg, and probably never will again. The fluid just goes there. Dana still kicks himself over the life-changing incident, a first for the 49-year-old, a career wetlands consultant. Dana maintains that he knew better than to step somewhere without looking first. I let my guard down when I normally wouldn't. In this case, I threw caution to the wind, and there he was. It just took one time, Dana shared. It's something I'm going to have to deal with and live with from now on. It'll never go away. Unfortunately, venomous snakes aren't the only dangerous creatures to look out for in the wild. There are deadly animals of all shapes and sizes. Scaled, furry, fanged, and in some cases, critters who look practically harmless, but they're actually considerably more threatening than you might expect. They're all out there waiting to strike. So make sure you know how to spot them. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspirational stories.